Alright, so I got so much I want to talk to you guys about, but we cannot move forward until we at least acknowledge and talk about the question that started this whole thing. Probably even started this whole channel and why I go hard for everything that I do on this channel now. So back in 2017, I started being a lot more open and a lot more vocal about my music production on my iPad. And it brought a lot of attention my way. I mean, because like before, I was kind of ashamed to tell people that I was making beats on my iPad. People just really didn't respect it back then, and they kind of really don't respect it now. And once I started seeing influencers like Henny the Business, Marfa More Beats, Jay Elliott, and so many others exploring the possibilities of iPad music production out in the open, I was like, yeah, I got to talk about mine. People started asking me questions about the relationship between the iPad Pro and my laptop. So you probably already know what this question is. Can the iPad Pro replace a laptop or desktop for music production in 2021? So again, some really still just don't take it that serious. And then on the flip side, you have some who it's always been that. It's always been the iPad Pro only for them. And so we have whole communities dedicated to iOS music production. Oh, it's a thing. Yeah. So in today's video, I want to start a deeper conversation, especially in the comment section, about how and why I use both. Alright, so even though this is a new conversation for some music producers, iPad beat making and iPad music production is not a new concept at all. Not even a little bit. There have been tons of producers and users who've been using these things as hardcore beat making machines for years. Grammy Award winning producers at that. I've been using the iPad to produce music since about 2014. I started on an old iPad Mini 2. At the time, that was a newer device. But I was using GarageBand and an app called Beatmaker 2. And even though that workflow left a lot to be desired back then, so much has changed since then. And a lot has not really changed. But even still, I was able to come up with some really competitive soundscapes and industry-ready beats that actually got a couple placements on TV shows, a couple mainstream artists, and even now some streaming apps like Hulu and even the BET Plus app, just to name a few. In fact, the beat that you hear playing in the background right now, you would never guess that it was created strictly on a no, this right here. Yeah, my iPad Pro. Don't believe me? Here's the session from the iPad. So again, layer by layer, piece by piece, element by element, I was able to create a really competitive sound using an extremely mobile device. Man, these iPads are not just content consumption devices anymore. Now, I know a lot of us were disappointed, highly disappointed, and some even devastated from some of the underwhelming news that we received from the event at WWDC this year of 2021. With Apple releasing the iPad Pro with the latest M1 chip, this is the same chip that is inside of the high-powered MacBook Pros. This really symbolized a promise for some more powerful and productive apps, as well as some much needed upgrades to the operating system. But we didn't get that this year. But even still, you cannot deny that the iPad Pro is still the most powerful tablet that you can use to make music professionally on the go. Even Apple's base model iPads without the M1 chip is still powerful enough to get you a competitive sound. They're still powerful enough to make really good music on. Trust me, it's all over the internet, especially on this channel. That's really what we're doing here. So if that sounds like something you might be interested in, definitely consider hitting that subscribe button if you haven't already. But that brings me to my next point of how and why I use both the iPad and the laptop for my music production workflow, because it's a convenience factor. Again, feel free to jump in the comment section and let's chop it up about any of this stuff that you might have questions about or if you want to share your information on. So let's jump into my reasons as to why I use the iPad and the MacBook Pro. So again, back in 2014, I hated not being able to have my equipment on me. I hated having beats in my head all day, and then by the time I get home to my equipment, I forget the beat. I never wanted that to happen again. I always wanted to be able to create my music in the most professional way possible, whether I was going to reference it later or use the elements that I used to create on the go and put those into an actual composition that I will create later on the MacBook. So for me, using the iPad Pro has always been about portability first. The convenience of being able to carry that around and not look out of place when I was trying to get a beat idea out quick, fast, and as accurate as possible to my original idea while I was thinking it. That's what it was for me. Voice memos just wasn't cutting it anymore. I'm not beatboxing into my phone and then try to reference the beatbox or hum. I just wasn't doing that. And the iPad and the iPhone have been a huge convenience for me to be able to do that, even with everything that I have going on now today in my life. I don't think I really have to explain why the iPad would be a better choice to pick up and walk out the door than a MacBook, and you have to set that up, flip it up, and there's just too many things to bring with the MacBook Pro to make beats. What I will say, however, is that I still use the MacBook Pro for my flagship software. Again, with these new M1 chips in the iPad, we thought that we would be getting Logic Pro on the iPad this year. Maybe it's just not ready yet, but you know, we still have to use our desktop and laptops for our flagship experience. VSTs like Nexus, Omnisphere, and even some contact libraries that people use just aren't available on the iOS platform just yet. So with the M1 chip being installed now in the newest iPad Pros, there still is some hope for that moving forward. And we'll talk about what it'll take for things like that to happen in the future with the iPad. Again, drop some comments and we'll talk about it. So another convenience factor for the iPad versus the MacBook for music production is the app selection. Even though we don't have a huge flagship selection like the VSTs on the desktop versions or laptop versions, we have an enormous selection of audio units on iPad, also known as AUV3s. Yeah, learn the lingo. This is the future. Oh yeah, we have a few reputable developers in the game that actually create VSTs for desktop as well, like UVI, you got Roly, you have Moog, you have Arturia, you have Korg selections. You got so many. And these aren't no kitty cat libraries. These are the real deal. Really nice samples. The problem is that for these libraries, the culture of iPad beat making was predicated on how much storage that you could get on your iPad up front, because people didn't really want to download tons of extensive libraries with huge large files. Developers were kind of reluctant to make their files bigger and give a thicker sound to all their samples in these libraries. And that seems to have become a theme for a lot of the iOS audio instruments. And that kind of brings me to one of the downsides of the iOS platform and iPad beat making: file management. Oh my God. So file management is still not the best on iOS. We all know this. There's tons of workarounds and apps that you can download, like Audio Share, to have a better experience when you're dealing with files, like audio files and stuff like that. But if we could get an update for that, I'm pretty sure that that update alone would make the MacBook Pro replaceable by iPad. Just a simple file management update could clean a lot of stuff up. Luckily, now in 2021, Apple is now releasing the newer iPad Pros with the option to have about 2 terabytes. That is amazing. So if you have the budget for it, I recommend it highly. So this way you could download as many sound libraries and music production apps as you like without worrying about running out of space on your iPad. That was a pretty huge issue in the iOS community for downloading apps, especially on the go. Another big reason for me, and for maybe for some other people, that the iPad Pro may be able to replace a laptop is the modularity and the accessories available for iPad. What I mean by modularity is that your workflow is extremely modular. If you think about all the apps that you use on the iPad, they're all modular. They're all little windows of workflows. So the way I think about it, instead of trying to adopt the concept of a flagship DAW like Logic Pro being on the iPad, I started thinking about all my apps being small workflows. I have an app especially for sampling. I have a sequencing app. I have a full-on beat making app, Beatmaker 3. And I even use apps or DAWs like Cubase's or even Roland Zenbeats for all of my mixing for all of my tracks as well. Again, I'm doing all of this on the go. Being able to piece all of these workflows right here in my pocket or in my backpack or in my jacket pocket or something like that is just like being able to have one of my flagship DAWs or all of the VSTs and plugins and stuff accessible on a mobile device. Extremely mobile. Not to mention the accessories. Now you can use Bluetooth keyboards and controllers with the laptops, but the convenience of being able to connect those seamlessly to the iPad is it's unmatched. For me, that makes the laptop experience alone replaceable. There's no strings attached. I can do everything Bluetooth seamlessly, quick and easy. Put everything up and bring everything out. Super simple. Now, how and why do I use both? Yeah, I still use both my laptop and my iPad collectively. They're all a part of this same workflow. I've literally trained myself to use my iPad on the go to either reference or mock up ideas and even finish ideas that I started on the laptop. I can do that all from my iPad. I've trained myself to do that workflow. Or vice versa. I'll start an idea here at the home studio on my laptop with some of my flagship sounds, bounce the audio, send it to my iPad, and finish the idea wherever I go. I've taken audio from here and mixed it on the go, and I've taken audio from on the go and mixed it right here in the home studio. That's just been my workflow, and it's been working for me for years. They work together for me like building blocks to a bigger purpose or a bigger project or a bigger body of work. Even a lot of my collaborations that I work with other people are made simple by just having my files on the go without having to bring a 16-inch laptop and everything needed to come with that. I got it all on my iPad. AirDrop, Dropbox, whatever you got to do. One of the things that I had to learn to do is stop trying to make the iPad perform like the laptop and just let the iPad be the iPad. So even when I bring the iPad back home to the home studio, I'm using Logic Remote, and that's an experience that you cannot duplicate from the trackpad on Logic. You can try it, but it feels a lot better touching the screen of an iPad to create those effects. It's just a completely different workflow. Let the iPad be the iPad, let the laptop do its thing. Speaking of bringing the iPad back home into the home studio, just like there are some VSTs that I can't yet get on the iPad, there are some apps that I've paid for on the iPad, some sounds that I really like on the iPad that I can use right back into my DAW on the laptop. Using the IDAM protocol from Apple, I can use my iPad as an actual sound module for my laptop. Yep, I can play real time the sounds, some of my favorite sounds and audio unit plugins directly into my DAW. And that's a workflow that I enjoy thoroughly because I spend a lot of time tweaking and sound designing sounds on my iPad while I'm on the go, so that by the time I bring them back home, I have a unique sound that I can use and nobody else has. Again, with the M1 chip coming to both the iPad and the laptop, that workflow may have just gotten that much easier, bringing the iPad apps over into the laptop for music production may be a easier thing to do now. I just haven't tried it because I don't own any M1 devices. But it's also going to take some more time, and it's also going to take some more of the developers to take iPad OS more seriously. I would love to see some more offerings from the likes of Spectrasonics or even, some people like Native Instruments to get on board with the iOS beat making community. So what do you think it would take for you to completely convert to an iPad for your daily music production device, if you haven't already? For those of you who have, keep rocking, keep making noise about the iOS music production community. We've known that this will be the future for a while, and not only is it the future, it is the right now. We have tons of beat makers and music producers in the community that are killing the game. So I say stick around, because we're going to be here for a while. So hopefully I've somewhat answered the question of, can an iPad replace a laptop for music production in 2021? If you enjoyed this content, go ahead and hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and hit that notification bell so that you don't miss anything that I post just like this in the future. My name is Brandon Rico. Thanks for rocking with me. Thanks for rocking with the channel. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.